Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark. And in this episode, I'm joined by co-hosts Phil Lindsey, Chris Mueller, and Kate Hensler. From the world of Hollywood comes a film from one of the most critically acclaimed actors of all time, featuring a young rock and roll band that strikes gold with a big hit, catapulting them to stardom while also teaching life lessons along the way. We're talking about That Thing You Do. That Thing You Do was written and directed by Tom Hanks and was released on October 4th, 1996. It was distributed by 20th Century Fox. The movie is set in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1964 and tells the story of the Wonders, a fictional band that comes together after the original drummer breaks his arm and has to be replaced for a local talent competition. Sitting in for the show is Guy Patterson, a drummer and jazz music fan who only has a short time to learn the group's song, That Thing You Do, before the competition. Guy joins Jimmy Mattingly, the creative force behind the band, who's also on guitar and lead vocals, Lenny Hayes, the lead guitarist, and the bass player, also known as TB Player. Jimmy's girlfriend Faye is also a major character in the story. As their performance begins, Guy suddenly alters the tempo of the song, speeding it up and changing it from a ballad to a rocker. As a result, the Wonders win the competition and immediately begin getting gigs around town. Thanks to That Thing You Do, the Wonders soon become the hottest rock and roll band around and are eventually contacted by a manager that gets them better paying gigs with more exposure. That manager soon hands them off to Mr. White, a top executive with Playtone Records who takes the Wonders on a tour throughout the United States. As their hit record rises on the charts, however, turmoil within the band begins to create problems as Jimmy wants nothing to do with the commercial aspects of being a star. His relationship with Faye is strained, and even though the band continues to gain popularity, the situation finally hits a boiling point, eventually leading to the end of the group. Hank's love of 1960s rock and roll is evident throughout the film, which pays homage to the era's sound through other fictional singers in the Playtone galaxy of stars. The movie's soundtrack plays like an authentic 1960s record as each song fits the style of the time. That Thing You Do was well received by critics and fans alike upon its release. The title track was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, and the film itself, which is still one of the most popular of Tom Hanks' career, continues to be a favorite of fans all over the world. And that's the lowdown on That Thing You Do. There's something about music biopics that can be insanely fun, and sometimes they're a bit formulaic, as we have seen. As Chris was just mentioning off mic about the Dewey Cox story, some of this stuff can be a bit formulaic. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee it, and I totally get it. Chris and I have done Walk the Line here on the 6M, and we've also, Phil and I have done Ray. So we have covered the music biopic. We've not done the Buddy Holly story yet. Gary Busey's a bit nutty, but it's a great movie. Maybe one day we'll cover it. But music movies are typically fun. The new Elvis biopic is coming up. Not sure what more we have to say about Elvis, if I'm being honest. No disrespect to the king, but man, we know a lot about this guy, and we've seen it portrayed before. We'll see if they can deliver anything new. But music movies are fun, and in particular, for me, the fictional bands in these movies are fun. I go to Almost Famous. Stillwater, for my money, is maybe the best fictional band I've ever seen in a film. That's me. I love that movie to death. But if I had to say what's neck and neck with the best fictional band I've ever seen, The Wonders, as in, I wonder what happened to the Oneaters. And of course, we're talking.
Hey, that's Onetters.
Yes. Yeah. We're talking about That Thing You Do. And I got to be honest, guys, I've not seen this movie in a while. But I love the idea of doing it because I'm a huge fan of this film. So, Kate, let me start with you. When's the last time you saw this movie? And what did you get from it watching it this time? Was it just as much fun now as it ever has been?
Oh my gosh. So I watched this probably between like 3 and 6 months ago with my family because this was for me growing up like a family movie. Like
Hmm.
we saw it in theaters as the four of us and we had it on VHS. For you young listeners, VHS predated DVDs, which if you don't know what DVDs are like a hard copy of Netflix. Uh, but like it's one of those ones where it was just like if it was like a family Friday night that movie was on, or in rotation with probably 4 or 5 others. Ironically enough, Apollo 13 is one of those ones too that we always watch that I never get sick of. Another Tom Hanks film that was just fantastic. But there's just something so complete about this movie that like on its own is so great, and then I have all these familial memories attached to it. So like we watched it and there was like a commentary version on YouTube, which I think is why we were like, oh, we're gonna watch this as a family. We were in separate rooms, but we were like, we have to do like a watch party as a family for this thing because it was just so it's just so it's never boring to watch. Like there's always such an attachment there. Like I'm always connected to something in the story. It's so fun. So about 3 to 6 months ago, and it brought back a bunch of nostalgia from an era I hadn't lived, and then nostalgia with family memories. It was really fun.
And you said fun, and that's to me that's the bottom line. If I had to sum this movie up in one word, it's fun. No serious drama, no wackadoodle stuff, no getting too mired down in story points and needless directions. It's a tight film. It does what it needs to do. It's lighthearted because it's a lighthearted thing. It doesn't capture the essence of the 60s, obviously, but it gives you a very brief snapshot of what America looked like during that time, at least a very small portion of it. It's a fun flick. I'm a music guy, so I love the music in this film. Chris, I'll throw it to you. How much of a fan of this movie are you? How many times have you seen it, you think?
You know, when Kate suggested this, I was actually super happy because I had just run across it on Hulu. So I was like, you know what? This gives me a really good excuse to see it because I probably hadn't seen this in 10 years. And I forgot how much I genuinely love this movie. Like, I knew I liked it, but revisiting it, I was just like, man, there's so many good things in this. And one of the things we were talking about before was some of the things this movie doesn't do are why I like it. Like, if you made this movie today, Giovanni Ribisi's drummer would have been jealous and he would have gone down a dark path after getting kicked out of the band. No, he just went and started working at Guy's dad's shop and possibly dating the sister, maybe. Like, there was no hatred or jealousy there. Nobody had a drug problem. I mean, they sort of implied it, but you never see Jimmy cheat on Faye with Diane Dane. So it's like, there's all these things that they would have put in to create extra drama now that they completely avoided doing. And it kind of feeds into what Kay was talking about with this movie just being like a nice, happy movie to watch. Even though it ends with the band breaking up, you still end on a happy note.
Oh, for sure. I love that. I love that it's like you said, it gives you the indication that things have happened. It's kind of like the old horror films where it's the villain's around the corner and you hear the terrible thing, but you don't actually see the terrible thing. And that's more frightening to me than seeing the blood splatter and the knife and the macabre nonsense we have happening in a lot of these horror films. The stuff you can't see to me is just horrifying. So like, I get where you're coming from. Like, we're going to reference it. We'll kind of maybe dance around it, but we won't show it. So I'm good with that. Phil, what do you think about this film, man? Are you a fan of this film? When's the last time you saw it?
Big fan of this film. I haven't seen it in a long time. It's one of those movies that it kind of feels like a Disney movie without being a Disney movie. And I will actually throw my hat in the ring for fictional bands and say Steel Dragon, sir.
Ah, well put. Are we going to go down that path?
Listen, the lack of Spinal Tap mentions in this conversation has pissed me off. Let's just move on.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh,
Spinal Tap is I love music biopics and I love Christopher Guest stuff. So Spinal Tap to me is just like a god. Just That's probably, that thing you do in Spinal Tap are probably both in like my top 5 of music movies.
I hang my head in shame for not mentioning Spinal Tap. So. But this goes to 11. Like that's just,
Of course,
you know,
it does.
it's great.
So great.
Yeah, I dig this movie. I've always loved this movie. There's some cornball moments in it, but it's fine. It's a 60s film. Tom Hanks gets all the credit in the world for being a really, really good actor. Great actor, some would say. But in terms of being a director, does he ever get a fair shake, Chris? Because, man, this movie is really, really good.
I mean, this is a movie that it feels like a lot of people could have directed this movie, but Tom Hanks, like, there's just something kind of wholesome about that guy, and that clearly just spreads to the work he does. And so when you watch a movie like this and you're like, oh, it's just kind of fun and nice and nothing too ridiculous is happening, and it's like, yeah, that's basically Tom Hanks in a nutshell, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, except for his son that
Chet.
for some reason thinks that he's like Jamaican.
I just read an interview with Chet Hanks this morning. I don't know why I wasted my time on that article when it came on my feed, but I was just like, this is so weird.
I also love that Colin Hanks was like, we do not claim him. I'm from the other marriage. Like, no, thank you. This is not for me. But what were you saying about Tom Hanks and his like directing ability? I feel like I see it a lot where when someone's great in front of the camera and goes into directing, if they don't go one way, which I think is overdoing it, they're very good at going the other way, which is like, there is so much simplicity in this film. Like, it's so like you were mentioning the like implied cheating of Dane and not the on-screen stuff. Like, there's something just so sincere in the storytelling, and like those cornball moments I feel like are even like, not that they're self-aware in the film, but they're not like so corny they don't make sense. You're like, no, this is like corny and authentic to the story that's being told. Like, it still all works together, even though they're a little bit cheeseball. So like, that was my favorite thing about this, where it's like, it almost feels like an indie film with how like simple everything is in it, even though it was like clearly Tom Hanks behind it and stuff. And I saw it like in a big boy movie theater, like a real one, but like there's just something so just a purity about it that like, it's, you know, it wasn't like overproduced. There's no special effects in it. Like all the like Mr. Downtown, like all of the tropes that they do use, I feel like are done perfectly, and then they avoid a lot of the ones that make you like roll your eyes when you see them now. Nobody's like on a crazy drug trip. Nobody's like messing around with infidelity to an insane point. Like, it's just like this simple music story that I feel like they took all the VH1 out of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that about it.
Kate, what about, and you're touching on it kind of right now, but what about this idea of, instead of, well, you know, we could have talked about Miles Davis, we could have talked about the Beatles, we could have, and they reference things here and there, but he built his own little fictional world here, like some world building. We talk about world building in this day and age with IP and stuff, but the world building in this movie is great because none of these people are real. None of these songs are real. The Wonders didn't sing anything. Spoiler alert, kids. But it's just, you know, he world built all this stuff, but man, like Mr. Downtown and the Chantrellines, it all feels real. It feels like not so much of a ripoff that it feels hokey. It legit feels like that was a Motown artist. This legit feels like it's real people. I mean, is it cooler? Like, to pull this off, I guess what I'm trying to say is walking the line, right? Because if you screw it up for one of these acts, you probably screwed up for all of them. But this whole thing feels like the real deal, Kate, to me, honestly.
It does feel like that they were just a part of this time period. And I think there's a huge advantage to not basing it on someone specific, because you're not married to anything and you can be everyone and nobody at the same time with that. But like you said, if you take a wrong turn, then it's terrible. But if you stay on it and you just take flavors of the stuff that you want to put in this band. Like, I even think about the scene where Tom Hanks is going through, like, Lenny is the fool, Jimmy is the talent. Yes. Like, it's almost like he was like showing his hand of how he cast this movie. And I kind of love that scene in it for that reason, because It's like you can just play into the archetype and then let the actors fill that magic in. You don't have to do that if you have a good cast. So you get to be married to no specifics about someone's career, but you get to be married to a time period, a music style, the ideas of the people in the band, the archetypes, and you I think give so much more creative freedom to your actors in that situation because they don't have to be a guy who exists. They don't have to consult anybody who exists. I'm sure they talk to people in bands and stuff, like researching or whatever, but like you get to let them be authentically them instead of having to marry a performance of being authentically yourself with somebody who existed in real life, which I think is trickier. So if it's done well, I think it's one of the best things you can do. If it's done poorly, it just comes across so bad. And I think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and it's and plus, if the person has passed away, you got to reach out to the family, or at least you would think it'd be good taste. You reach out to their estate. Can we use their likeness? Can we use this? Can we use this song? Then there's the issue of music rights, because you got all these different record companies have to be on the same page, and that's hard in and of itself. I mean, yeah, it seems like this is the best way to go. I mean, this movie honestly could have flopped. This could have been, I mean, it means well, but it's too hokey, it's too silly. But it seems like they hit on just the right formula, Chris, of it being charming, of it being a period piece, but not so much on the nose that makes you roll your eyes. It seemed like the mix was perfect for this movie.
Oh, I agree. And I think the casting is the biggest strength of this movie. All 4 members of the band and the whole supporting cast all play their roles really well. Like, Guy's father is low-key one of my favorite characters in the movie. And it's mostly for one specific scene when they go on TV later in the movie and they're all excited watching it at home. And then they cut back to the family after the performance is over and the dad has the sunglasses on and he's just singing the song completely wrong. That's exactly what a dad would do. Like he's still just like super excited for his son, which I'm glad they included a scene like that because the first half of the movie, he's yelling at his son for keeping the lights on in the store the whole time. Like, it was nice to see that he is a supportive father who loves his son. And yeah, I don't know. There's so many characters in this movie that we could talk about, just little things that they do that are great. I think I have the movie on in the background on mute right now, and I just passed the scene where they had their first performance. There's that scene in the car where Tom Everett Scott and Charlize Theron are talking and he's going nuts about like how happy he is and how he thought the song sounded great because they sped up the tempo and all this stuff. And she tries to interject like, oh, hey, Faye and Jimmy, they make a cute couple, huh? And she like smiles. And when Guy completely skips over that, you see that smile leave her face in an instant. And it's just this like really quick little moment of great acting by Charlize Theron, because in that moment, I think, is when you could tell that she was like, yeah, this guy's probably not going to be around for very long. I should probably find someone else.
I made copious notes on this film in preparation for this episode.
So did I.
And one note I wrote was, I think the Tina reference started off with Tina is not happy. And all through my notes, Tina is still not happy. And then all caps, man, Tina is not happy. Like all the way through this movie, she's not happy. Phil, Chris has mentioned the cast. Let's talk about the cast. So let's run it down. We've got Steve Zahn as Leonard, who they call Lenny, or Leo. Leo, the TV called him Leo, which is, I guess that's fine. Ethan Embry as the guy who has no name, but he's TB player, as in the bass player. Embry said during the reunion, I think it was last year, the year before, I think, that he personally gave the character name Tobias because he needed to call him something in his head, but he never officially had a name.
Nick Papagiorgio. That's what I always think of when I see him.
Oh, that's funny. There you go. Jonathan Sheck as Jimmy Mattingly II, which is just a fittingly perfect character name. And then, of course, Tom Everett Scott as Guy. Phil, favorite band member of the Oneaters. Who you got?
I mean, it's Shades, right? It's Guy. He's the best member of the band. I will just intercede and say that his dad has several scenes in this that are amazing, like him reading the newspaper early on. Hilarious. Hilarious.
And that was apparently improv too.
Yes, it was.
Was it really?
Yeah. They were talking about that baseball reunion special thing I sent you, Kate.
Yeah. I missed that.
He talked about it
funny.
specifically where Tom Hanks is like, yeah, you're reading the paper, go. And so he just does that because he's like a great comedic actor outside of this.
Hilarious, man.
That feels so specific. That's incredible. Of like a shoe polisher can't even get a rag. And like that's
talking about staying open on Sundays and
magical. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, say, why don't we just get that out of here? She's like, yeah, let me just take that away.
You know what's funny
take that away.
Pennsylvania is one of the biggest blue law states in the country. You couldn't have been open on Sundays back in the 60s, even if you wanted to be.
Nah.
There you go.
Man, how'd that slip by him? That's good.
So great, man. It's just staying open on Sundays. If we have to do that, then I just don't know if I want to do this anymore.
I don't think we should have to work in a country where we stay open on Sundays, should you? Like,
Let's just put this paper away, Mama.
Yeah, that's it.
It almost brings you back. Like, for me, I always kind of viewed him as similar to a way lesser extent, but the Dad in A Christmas Story. Like, they both had that same kind of like just taking everything so seriously and no need to be kind of thing with them, and felt like so true to the periods that they were in. I absolutely love Guy's dad in this. I feel like he was like such a show-stealing side character. Just him and all those little things of like him going to turn off the lights. Like, they didn't need to do that, but they put that scene of him just going to turn off
in
the
his
lights
robe.
In his robe. It's so great. It's so great. Even just like the Darlene, you just got promoted, you're gonna start paying me. I didn't say that. Like, just such like those spiteful little things are so great. Like, he is a absolute. I'm a South Park girl. He's like Randy Marsh to me, where he's like not like a principal character, but like steals the show for me 100%. I love it so much.
Can't turn off the lights at home. What made me think he turned the lights off here? I don't know. He's just rambling the whole time.
So great. But yeah, for sure, it's Guy. I mean, as Faye said at the end of the movie, none of this happens without Guy.
That's a good call. And I remember when all this started happening, when this movie came out, like one of the ideas put forth, I can't remember if it was Tom Hanks or who said it, but this idea of the Beatles weren't the Beatles till Ringo got there. Like, Pete Best was a good drummer. He wasn't a great drummer. And they liked him. They didn't love him. So it's like, well, the minute Pete leaves the band and Ringo comes in, then it's the Beatles. So it's like, if not for shades, there's no wonders.
Even though John made a point of joking on how Ringo wasn't a great drummer several times.
But to be fair, they're at war all the time, though, right?
What's funny, if you look at post-Beatles breakup, the first 10 years after the band broke up, Ringo had the most success as an individual.
Yeah, he hit number one first out of all of them.
Yep.
Well, I remember I take vocal lessons, and I remember my voice teacher, who's an extremely skilled multi-instrumentalist on his own right, him saying there's two schools of thought on that to him, and he was like, it's not that different than Tom Morello on guitar to him, where it's like people will say he's not a technical guy, but he created an entire technique. So it's like, where does that line start and stop? Is he a technical guy in like a traditional sense, where he probably was sitting around and practicing like you would want someone to? No, but is he creative enough to have created an entire technique that changed the landscape of things? Hell yeah. So
of course.
I just always like, that's always playing in the back of my mind, but I've always felt that was extremely intentional. Like, definitely something that was based off of the Beatles in that regard, of like the drummer being the guy that was the linchpin who came in later, who changed the course of their music career entirely. Like, that always read very in the blueprint of the Beatles to me.
And the bit where Tom Hanks' character, whose first name is Amos, and I had no idea, Mr. White's all they call him in the movie. But White tells him, you're the backbeat, you're the guy that holds that, you hold it together, you're the rhythm, you're the one, you're the head of the band. Honestly, I mean, I play bass, and I would listen to the drummer before I listen to the lead guitar, because that you get in sync with the drummer. That's how and you've got the song nailed. So you wait for his beat. That's where you hit this chord and you hit this, so it makes perfect sense. And plus there's something else there, Chris, isn't there, about not just as a musician, but holds the band together because he's got the right personality. He's a good guy. He's got the rock and roll mentality. Hey, let's play it fast. I mean, he holds them together more than one way, doesn't he?
Yeah, and they go out of their way to establish that their first manager, I forget his name, and then Tom Hanks, both view him as the smart one in the band. Like
Right.
they bring him to Tom Hanks before the rest of the band.
Yeah.
So he's clearly, even though the newest member of the band, he's viewed as the leader. And I kind of like that they threw in one line about the fact that he served in the military, because then that kind of tells you right there, like maybe he just picked up a little bit of leadership experience in the military.
Yeah.
I always felt like they played to the stereotypes of every instrument there, right? Like Lenny is backup vocals and a guitarist. He's just like a goofball out of his mind. And then like the ego is the lead singer and the bass player is so unassuming he doesn't even get a name in the damn movie, right? Like I loved that they kind of filtered into all of those things. I think that was just a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, Tom. What did you think about the bass player purposely not having a name in this movie? Because the bass player is usually the guy off to the side somewhere, like John Deacon.
We're the unsung heroes, man. We just kind of hang back.
You had to laugh when they were driving next to Guy and his girlfriend in the car, and Steve Zahn yells, "What are you doing with him? He's a drummer."
Right. That's good stuff. I love that. You know, it's that old cliche about bass players don't make faces and they stand still and there's no emotion. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But Ethan Embry, how is he no one's favorite? Isn't it? He's no one's. Is he anybody's pick here for a favorite Oneater or what?
I mean, it's hard to pick, but like Ethan Embry and Steve Zahn both for me stand out big time in this movie, especially Steve Zahn, just because he gets so many funny lines. You know, talking about got a pig in competition, he's going to win that blue ribbon. One of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Or like 2 minutes after they're done filming that stupid beach movie, they're in an interview and he's like, "What were some of your biggest influences?" Steve Zahn's like, "Captain Geach and the Shrimp Shack Shooters." Tom Hanks's face just drops like, "You jerk." But it's so good. But yeah, Ethan Embry, man, like the fact that he was in this and Empire Records in the 90s, like two of the most iconic music movies from my like formative years. And I don't think he gets enough credit for how good of an actor he is, especially because he was so young when they made this. He was like 17 when they filmed this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, he just has that innocence about him that is perfect for that character that they were trying to make. And him just like running off to join the military was so random and funny to me.
And like that whole Tom Hanks in directing, I find, does one of my favorite things that writers and directors do, which is assume that the audience is smart enough to put two and two together with really simple things. I find Aaron Sorkin is also fantastic at this, where it's like that whole scene with the push-ups, like leaning into that, right? Like, and the stuff you said about Diane Dane, we don't see them have the affair, but you know something's going on. Like, I think that helped this movie so much, of just, you don't have to spell it out so obviously for us. Like, I think for some reason between that and like the time period it was in, and because it is such a charming movie, that would kind of ruin it if you broke some of that down, right? But like, I just love that he's like doing push-ups in the diner or wherever they are. Like, it's so funny to me.
And then him and the military guys go to Disneyland together.
Go to Disney. Like, it's so, like, you don't see him going to sign up for the military, talking to someone, you know what I mean? Like, I love the way that they pieced his story together. And I think, I mean, if you're asking me my favorite Wonder, for me, it's Steve Zahn. Like, he just cracks me up this whole movie.
Here.
Like, he's such an idiot with the girl in the Corvette. Like, he's just so stupid in the best way possible. Like, there's like this fantastic silliness, but also this naivety with him, and also just this like, I'm along for the ride kind of spirit that like he makes it so accessible, and he's someone that you've met before. You know this guy, you can name this guy, you can point this guy out in other bands. Like, I just love it. But Ethan Embry's story, the way it's pieced together, considering he was kind of like peripheral, I thought was so well orchestrated. And then they had to bring in the Wolfman at the end there. And I also loved that it's like as the band is starting to peak, it's also starting to sour at the same time, and that's when you have to call in, this hired gun and stuff. Like I just, it feels like such a real music story for a fictional band. It really is an incredible feat.
There is really one thing early in the movie too, when they first hear their song on the radio, Ethan Embry's coming out of a military surplus store wearing a military jacket. They establish very subtly early on that that's his goal, is to go join the military.
What doesn't he say he's gonna leave when they're first talking to Mr. White? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna leave. One other thing that I found fascinating one time I watched it is because you guys noted that Shades did go to, and he was stationed in Hamburg, right? And so
I picked up on that.
I thought it was interesting when they were walking out after they had that whole falling out where Jimmy walked away, and then Faye told them, he's smart, guys. You just got to give him a chance. And then we get that great line where if Jimmy's smart, I'm Utan. And so TB doesn't even understand this as a guy that wants to join the military. And Guy is somebody that's like, no, I've been there, done that. I already know so much, but I don't have to tell you guys how much I know.
Right. Good call. Yeah. I always wonder if the Hamburg reference was in honor of the Beatles, because they played Hamburg, Germany during their early days as a band. I always wonder if that was put in there intentionally.
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
There may also just have actually been a military base there at the time. That seems like the kind of detail Tom Hanks might know. He's obsessed with World War II.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. I'm a Lenny guy also. I think he had the best dialogue of any of the band members in this movie. Nobody picked Jimmy. What's going on? No one likes the straight-laced. I'm all about my principles and my music, and no one's picking the perfect haircut guy. Come on.
It's so funny to me that he responded to that tweet I sent out the other day.
That was hilarious.
That was amazing.
Like a few times. That was great.
And you legit didn't know he was Jonah Hex? That you didn't know that was him?
I had no idea. That blew my mind when I looked up his filmography. I'm like, where have I seen his name again recently?
Yeah.
And then I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's why I don't recognize him, because half his face is melted when he plays Jonah Hex. So of course I'm not going to recognize him.
I always wish that it took off, because he did great in that character.
Oh, yeah. And I think he just played Jonah again on an episode of Batwoman, I believe. So I do think that they're keeping him around in this little Arrowverse or CW verse, whatever they want to call it. I fell out of it a few years ago. But yeah, him as Jonah Hex was outstanding. And then that right there made me appreciate his acting in this so much more, because I'm like, damn, he can play that and this character this well. Like, this guy's pretty versatile, but he does a lot of behind the scenes stuff too. He's like a writer, director, producer. He does all kinds of things. So yeah, but he was designed to be the character you don't want Faye to be with. So he almost had a little bit of a thankless role in this movie, because he's kind of the one complaining the whole time. Like, when are we going to record? Oh, we can only record my music. Like, it's a little sad to think about that, because he loved the experience of making this movie, but so many people probably think of his character as the worst one.
Right.
No, absolutely. He is absolutely Billy D in this movie, where he's the villain of the movie, and it's like we can't just enjoy everything he brings to this movie, because he's also like, he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of a jerk for the entire movie.
A little bit.
This is kind of a trickier role than I think it gets credit for, because he has to be a jerk, but he's also not like the typical rock star ego presenting, because that just kind of comes later. Like, you can't play the glam metal Axl Rose frontman for like a 60s piece. Like, he has to be trying to look like he's the face of these clean cut guys, right? But he's also super egotistical. It has to be his stuff. But one thing that I really appreciate it is, like, there's points where he's the only guy taking this seriously. So, like, there's some redeeming quality there where it's just like, well, yeah, I would want to slap Lenny in the face too. At this moment, like, I would want more than one take if I was recording in a church and I thought this was going to go somewhere. Like, I appreciate that in his ego-driven self still wanted the music to be good. So there was like something redeeming in that, which I think was good to make it like a little bit more accessible. And then you start to see him like kind of just lose it at the end. But I really liked that about him. I thought that's a tricky role to nail because it's not on stage moments that you see his ego come out. There's never an on stage. I appreciated that about the movie too. Whenever they're on stage, everybody's getting along just fine. You know, it's like all behind the scenes stuff. This isn't like an onstage explosive thing.
And he
But
doesn't
he was great.
he doesn't feel like a heel with an agenda. Like he doesn't really have ulterior motive. He's not out to take the other guy's money. I don't think he really views them as a backup band. In fact, when Guy nails the drums on the song, he pops. He's like, "Perfect, man, perfect." And he's like, he appreciates a musician. I think his focus is, I got to write songs. I got to make this happen. I got a vision. But along the way of getting there, oh, I'm not a people person, and I kind of treat people horribly, and I'm in my own head all the time. And I'm not trying to defend the heel, kids. I'm just saying, I kind of see. I love that it's not clear cut. Like, yeah, he's a jerk, but he's not
He's
such
just
of a
trying to
jerk.
listen.
Yeah,
He's just trying to listen to Diane Dane and all that she warned him about, you know?
right.
Oh my god.
I love that he ends up
Diane
back
warned
at
me about
Playtone
this.
Records too. At the end, they establish he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, he had 3 gold records with that record
Yes.
label. He quit." So it's like that's so real to the music industry too.
Right.
So it's such a great little detail for them to throw in.
It is, but it also is like there's undertones to his character that he has this big ego, but he also has insecurities. We see that several times in the movie where he shows like stage fright sometimes, weirdly, and like him throwing up in the bathroom out of nowhere,
Yeah.
or their first performance where they did badly and he couldn't pull it together because he was just as nervous as the other 3. But there's almost this thin line of him being so upset that thing you do went off as it did because of Guy, because it wasn't his song anymore, it wasn't his ballad anymore, it wasn't his group anymore, almost, because Guy was turning into a star, and I think in some ways he resented that.
That's why he was pushing for that extra take of My Only Dreams, man.
I don't want any of that lover's lament crap. I want something snappy.
That's such a good
Catchy.
line from Tom Hanks.
Yes.
And let me ask you guys this. So Tom Hanks in this movie is a record executive, which is one of the most villainous roles you can play in a movie 99% of the time. Hanks plays it perfectly neutral. He is not a great guy by any means, but he's not a bad guy either.
Yeah.
And you almost get the impression that at one point he might have set up Jimmy and Faye to break up because he knew Guy and Faye belong together. He inserts these little lines about Faye once in a while when he's talking to Guy.
Oh, he knew it. He saw it from a distance. For sure.
So yeah.
To me, his role in this just read like he just had so much experience, and that's what I loved. He wasn't villainous, he wasn't a super great guy. It was just, this is how the business works. And to me, Faye and Guy and him picking up on that was like, I've seen this before. I've seen all of this before. I work at Playtone Records, for God's sake. I know how this industry works. I know your trajectory, and that's the line that we get of the one-hit wonders. It's a very common tale. Like that, to me, his whole character was just like, I know the system, and that's why he is like a talent scout, and he just knew how to build them up. And I loved that with Guy and Faye, because that never read to me like he was trying to break up Jimmy and Faye. I think he just knew it was inevitable, so he was just almost like, seen it, been there, done it, like let me raise some awareness to this young lady and help her see what's right around the corner here.
And Phil, to Chris's point about White, he was ready to walk away when Guy was apprehensive about signing with him. He's ready to walk away. And then in the end, when the band kind of dissolved, he just walked away. Like Chris said, he's seen all this before. Like he likes the guys, but he's not so attached. He can't just stop right now and walk away from it.
Oh, for sure. He's such a great character because he's trying to guide them through all these things that come with being, a new act and the fame that comes along with it. But he's also like, well, if it don't work out, I have a job. I'll be fine.
Right.
Like it's whatever to him. It's like it's several scenes where he's just like, all right, well, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do.
We talked about Tina earlier, Charlize Theron. It's only her second movie. And honestly, I can't say I forgot she was in it, but for some reason in my head, it wasn't, oh, that's Charlize Theron. It just wasn't. But then when I went back and watched, I'm like, oh my God, that is her. Like, for some reason, it wasn't, in my head, wasn't clicking. It was her. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. But she was great because, like we said, she's wholly disinterested in what Guy's doing. Obviously, two different paths here. I thought she was great.
Is it just me, or does she look like Katherine Heigl in this movie a lot?
She does.
Oh, those two have
They
bear a striking resemblance to each other because they both have very similar cheek and chin bones. Yeah, watching this movie though, because I just watched one of Charlize's recent movies, that one with Seth Rogen where she's like Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I'm bad at picking out whether or not anyone's ever had quote unquote work done, but Charlize Theron might be one of the people in Hollywood who has aged the best, because this is like 26 years later and she still looks amazing.
She does.
I remember I was like pretty young when I saw this, and I remember seeing her and being like, that's the prettiest girl in the world.
Right?
Like, I remember as a little girl, and I was blonde too, so I remember being like, whoa, like, I want to look like that. Like, she was just so pretty. And even, like, her kind of, I don't want to call it condescension, because I think Guy comes across as such, like, so dopey in a lot of this, and she just is like, yeah, I'm looking for someone serious. Not like this guy who's playing in his little band, not knowing what was around the corner for him, obviously. But it feels like a 60s Mean Girls thing or something. Like it fits that, like her dismissiveness, I should say, feels very like real and true to someone. I've met someone who treats people like that before. And the whole dentist thing, when she meets that Ken doll of a dentist and she has to spend all day with him, is so funny.
That freaking pro wrestler dentist.
Yeah, just like,
dude's jacked.
Just like this enormous, like, I guess he's also does bodybuilding on the side dentist, but just like, I love how like Guy is just so in his own world. He like raises an eyebrow at the fact that she has to be at the dentist all day.
And she's so excited too.
Yeah, like she's so excited to go to the dentist, and he just like kind of passes it off like, oh, that's weird. Anyway, I love it. But she was great in this, and I just remember being so awestruck at how pretty she was when I was little, because I was just
talk about perfect casting to play the contrast to Liv Tyler, because Charlize Theron is like, she's the upper class girl. She's the blonde girl on the front of the magazine. And then Liv Tyler is sort of America's sweetheart. And they're both incredibly beautiful women and great actresses. But when you look at them, they're very different types of people, and they play very different types of characters. And so I think it's brilliant casting that they cast these two to play opposite each other. While they were never necessarily rivals, they fill two very different roles very, very well. And unfortunately, this movie was made at a time where a lot of the love interest women were not given much to do outside of be the object of somebody's affection. So we never really get to find out what Liv Tyler's goals and motivations are in life in this movie. But with what she's given to do, I think she does a fantastic job in this.
I feel like that's almost... So I will say, when you were talking about them being kind of rivals, when they meet and Liv Tyler goes, "Nice to meet you," in the bitchiest way possible. Oh my God, my heart. I loved the way she did that, and the look on her face was fantastic. But I almost felt like, because that stuff bothers me so much as a woman when we just see them as like these one-dimensional love interests. But I also kind of appreciated that we got the, like, you want her on tour? She's your costume mistress.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like, it's almost justified in that way, because you're like, this, what I'm watching is about the Wonders. Like, not so much, she's not Yoko Ono. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so because it's from that perspective, I feel like it's a little bit more justified that she's not as fleshed out as you probably want her to be. And I also feel like you do at least see a transformation in her with her romantic angle with Jimmy, because it's like, you see her trying to justify how smart he is, and that just like falling apart in her hands. Like, and like, even when she and Guy are having that conversation right before they kiss, you see her like very reflective and stuff. So you do at least like get some sort of development with her. But I always felt like there was a little bit more justification, because the movie's not supposed to be about the costume mistress.
Sure.
And she wasn't the thing that broke up the band. She was one of the things that broke up the band to me. So I was like, because it's about the Wonders, it doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always feel like, and this goes back to what Tom Hanks says when they break up, is I feel like she was like, by extension, a member of the group, like even more than TB at some points, because even when he gives that whole exchange of this person's that, he goes, and Faye, well, Faye's special. He doesn't say anything about TB.
No, nothing.
That's a really good point.
And then, oh man, but with her, like, she's the one selling the records. Like, she really is helping them out. You know, she's not just sitting on the sidelines. So I do wish that they had gone into something like actually have her be somebody who's good at getting people dressed up, like make her the actual costume person for them or something. Oh, speaking of the costumes, how funny is it that Tom Hanks tells them they look good in every color?
Perfect.
Oh, so good.
It's such a shady record executive thing to do, but for some reason you kind of take him seriously, because it's like they never look bad.
Does it. Hey man, have I told you guys you look great in red?
I think there's something so great about it, because it's almost like it's always in a situation where he's trying to keep them loose. It's almost like that. You look great today, before someone's about to go do something really important.
I love
like
that.
It's always right before they're about to go on live that I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I feel like it's like it is such a smarmy record exec thing, but it's also just like a, hey, you're about to go, like, you got stage fright, like, let me throw this line your way a little bit. So I always appreciated that about it, but that cracks me up every single time. I love that.
And plus, he's a business guy. He knows how to sell things, and he's all over Guy about wearing shades. And where's your glasses? Someone find a guy's glasses, because he keeps saying, you got, these are your trademark. You never go anywhere without them, because he knows they need to have something. Because there's going to be a lot of bands on the stage tonight. They need to be remembered, and it works. It totally works.
How funny is it when the photographer calls him out, though, and he's just like, so you just wear those shades because you want to look cool? And he's like, well, I am the drummer.
And they're all like, yeah, okay.
Oh man. He was on to branding and marketing before branding was even a buzzword.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Faye's story, though, is that she was so fascinated and so just everything was about Guy. I mean, not Guy, but everything was about Jimmy. Everything was about making sure, hey, this is his dream. So I want to make sure that, I'm a part of helping him, accomplish his dream. And she just got lost in that. And at the end of the movie, it's like, all right, well, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here if it's just for him? Like, why am I wasting my time?
Yeah.
Yeah, because she, like, I think came to the realization it wasn't at all reciprocated, right? Like, I think that was her realizing, like, okay, now you made it to the top, so what's next? And he just didn't have an answer. It's another gold record. It's not anything to do with her. It's like, all right, I supported you to your dreams. They're accomplished. Now what? Then you're like left kind of holding an empty basket there.
I loved the little detail that they threw in of she was the one who introduces the bass player to one of the girls from the Chantrelines.
That was good.
During that little montage. That is something that they could have touched on that they didn't. Think about an interracial relationship in the 60s.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That could have made this a super dramatic movie if they had actually addressed, like, what happens when a famous black musician and an up-and-coming white musician get into a relationship.
Yeah, and the woman is black and the man is white. Like, yeah, I think Ethan Embry doing the Chandralene's dance is like one of the
that is on
best
my screen
moments in
right now,
cinematic
Kate. I'm not
history.
kidding. I'm at the
Oh
part.
my
I'm at the
gosh!
part where they're at. I think it's the Wisconsin State Fair, and he's dancing to them right now. And then it just jumped to Faye and Jimmy in the bar together. That's amazing.
It's so good. It's such a great moment.
It's and again, like we touched on earlier, the fact is this movie could have went in a dozen different directions, and it's giving you in your mind you can explore it and go places, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that movie. It's just going to show, well, you can go here and go there, but we're going to tell this story because like there's 10 different stories in the course of this movie, like Chris just said. But I love the idea of, God, man, that's a lot to tackle. We don't want to make this movie 3 hours. That's a lot of content. Let's make it light. Let's make it the band. And then in your mind, you can fantasy cast part 2 and 3 if you want to. And, there's a universe we never got to see. I would have been interested to see, except just the end credits, what happened to these characters. But that's another topic, right? That would have been interesting to see what happens the day after all of this happens. Like, is no one talking to each other? Like, did Lenny just completely stop talking to them when he got married in Vegas? What happened to the guy? Like, did he forget he was in a hit band with a hit record?
Now,
So
I want to believe that he came back in the room like Donald Glover, like, yeah, so we're going to the next gig and nobody's there.
Just the whole place is on fire.
Oh, man, I would have loved that.
Just Lamar is there and he has to catch him up to speed because he's the hotel guy that knows everything.
Yeah.
Why
I
do they
love Lamar?
Why do they end the movie with Lamar looking straight
Looking
into the
at you.
camera? That's so
Yeah.
funny.
Like,
Oh, I love
That's
it.
so
I
funny.
like I'm
I
behind
love
this
it
whole
so
thing.
much.
Yo, and Phil and I talked about this earlier. That is the shady record executive from the final season of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Oba Babatunde, the actor.
Yes.
Same guy.
Stop! Oh my god, I love that. I did not know that. That's so great.
Yeah, he's
I
really
feel like
good.
he plays Barry Gordy in several movies as well.
I think so.
I loved that ending. That to me is like the Porky Pig, that's all folks sign off.
Oh my
Like,
god.
I
very
loved
good.
that.
Totally.
Very good.
And warms my heart. What a fun, silly little, like, he's like the final nudge to push them together. So young Squire.
Yeah.
He's so responsible for the inspiration in Shade's life, just as this guy at the hotel. He gets him to go down to the blue spot. He gets him to like, I love, like, just by literally getting him in cabs and like nudging this crush that he has on Faye, he's like responsible for so much of his life of like keeping him connected to authentic musicians and making him realize true love. And he's just the bellhop and the hotel manager.
And much like Mr. White, Kate, we kind of feel like this guy's seen some stuff too. This isn't the first young band that stayed in this hotel. He's seen these things happen before.
Oh, I love when he's just like, I got actors in my hotel. And she's like, no, musicians. He's like, even better. But yeah, he has some just great scenes in this. Like, he's the only one who took care of Faye when she was sick.
I know.
Well, guy took care of her on the plane.
Yeah, true.
Guy cares.
True,
Guy,
but he sent her soup. He taught her how to build something to her room. Like, man, he was on that right away. It was a great little addition to the movie, and it feels like Tom Hanks probably knew some guy at a hotel at some point and was like, I got to base a character on that guy because he's great.
Yeah, it does kind of feel that way of like someone out of a real world experience that got written in.
Yeah, I love that scene though of Guy putting the blanket on her and then going to sit down and goes, "Hey, Faye is kind of sick," and he just completely changed him. He just completely changed the subject.
Oh my god, that's so great.
And Jimmy doesn't give a shit.
Also, in the bar after their first like state fair performance or whatever, when Jimmy goes over to talk to Diane Dane, there's this quick little scene that I almost didn't catch the first time I rewatched this recently, where he's sitting down, you see her nodding to all the other people in the booth, like, get that out of here. This young hot guy is here to talk to me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like
she's like
she
too
had
good for everyone else.
Yeah.
Too.
And
like,
then she goes and like,
get out of my way.
And then she's like sitting on his lap while she's doing a sound check. Like, she had her hooks in him immediately.
Yeah. He was kind of starstruck.
Yeah. I love that she I love that the object of his affection was also someone that like was more established in the industry and had more experience. Like it kind of justifies like he's a serious musician, so he's gonna cozy up to this established serious musician that might be able to get him to go somewhere, as opposed to Faye, who's bringing shades his glasses. You know what I mean? Like I felt like you were like, yeah, I buy that guy would want that woman a lot. Like that's she was great. Her in that gold Wisconsin sunrise dress. She was a really another well cast little like side character that still has important implications in the movie.
Yeah, because her disillusionment with the record industry rubs off on him immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Never trust the label.
And she is where he wants to be. That's where he wants to be, is where she is.
And what's funny is she's on the downward end of her career at this point, and he doesn't realize that.
And he doesn't see it either, because he respects her.
Right.
I also appreciated how like even with Mr. Downtown, right, Freddie Fredrickson, that what a perfect name for that guy too. They went from being starstruck by him to him like introducing them like as a part of their rise. Like I loved how quickly that happened. Like the oh my god, you're Freddie Fredrickson, and then all of a sudden he's introducing them. Like I just thought that was a really fun like temperature measure of where they are in their careers.
Yeah, and it's you know, all this started back for at least for this movie, the fact that this was a small town, like it was Erie, PA, which they reference quite a few times in this movie. But this idea that these, and we'll call them kids, these kids were really doing nothing, just regular kids in a small town who liked rock and roll, and just, you know, guy gets in the band, next thing you know, they're taking off. It's a very romantic kind of story, and a great blueprint for a rock and roll movie, like a throwback 50s rock and roll movie. In a lot of ways, after you see this movie, you're like, oh my God, why has this never been done before? Like we've seen versions of stuff, but man, again, as I said earlier, this just has the right mix of everything. But I think it starts with, they had to come from us. If these kids were being raised in New York City, it'd be a different movie. If they were in Los Angeles already, it's a different movie. But they come from a small town and they get to tour the country. That's a whole different dynamic. And it's, again, the four lads from Liverpool. Liverpool, where's that at? Well, it's nowhere, right? But like they get to tour the world, and it's just it's taking them out of their element and putting them in front of cameras and microphones and the press, and they just get to be themselves. I love that. There's so much mimicking happening here, but in the best possible way. And I don't know if it's the same movie without it.
I think that's like a big part of why we're all wrestling nerds. Like there's all this talk about the casual fan. I feel like there are no that thing you do casual fans. I think it's people that can quote it like we can.
Yes.
Or people that saw it once and were like, oh, that was cute. Or people who haven't seen it yet. But like there are people that like this picked up a cult like following, and I think that's really fun about it. I love when you see, like, I know there was a South Park episode where they referenced this movie a bunch of times. Like you see one of the characters come out and say, I quit, like do Jimmy's smarmy little thing. So it's fun because it's like it really was a blueprint. But I think what you said about like the mix of all of those things, I think that's why people get like so drawn into it and why it stays connected the whole time.
You know, this movie also captures a couple of very realistic reactions to certain milestones. Like I've had friends who were in bands who got like little successes here and there. I remember literally driving in a car with my friend. We were listening to local Chicago station, Q101. Phil probably has remembered this station. There was like the rock station for years. And his, like, they had sent in their song, it might get played, it might not, kind of thing. And it came on the radio and he was freaking out. He had to like pull over. He was calling all the other guys in the band, like back on our Nokia cell phones. And, like that was just such a genuine thing when they first hear themselves on the radio and they're freaking out and running around the thing. Like, yeah, that is exactly what those young guys would do the first time they hear their song on the radio. That's so true to life. Like Reg the other day, when his song got played on AEW Dark, like watching him freak out on Twitter was hilarious.
It ruled. It ruled. He wasn't making out with a very expensive cardboard cutout floor display, but
No. And was it me, or did it look like the sister was a little mad that she didn't go to kiss him? Or her, I mean.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember picking up on that, but I believe
Because she's
I
like
believe
smiling
that.
for a second, and then he grabs the cutaway and runs away, and then you see her kind of pull the handkerchief out of her hand with her other hand really hard.
That's a very expensive floor display. Put that down.
So good.
That's such a Lenny thing to do, because he would notice that the girl that's into him is into him. He'd be into the other girls that don't care about him.
Oh my God, when he's trying to pick up the one girl and she's just like, what about the bass player? He's married.
Yes.
Chris, she has a name. It's Chrissy Tompkins. Sir.
Yeah.
How dare
Oh,
you.
sorry. The gray polka dot dress. Yep.
And that scene
Where
in
was I? Oh, playing songs on my guitar. Like so great.
that scene in the store when they hear the record. Am I the only nerd here that had, and I've seen this movie a bunch, I had cold chills because I forgot how awesome that scene is. And I was literally excited for this fictional band, and it's not real. But it was the coolest thing because I hadn't watched this movie in a while.
I
Like,
love that the
popped
mom
for
is
it.
rocking out to it too. Like she's kind of
Yes.
shaking her shoulders, and one of her friends calls her to tell her, and she's like, yeah, we're listening to it. Like that is such small town realism.
And the dad still
Yeah.
doesn't care. Hey, don't mess with that. Don't kick that,
Take your cotton picking hands off that
Yeah.
radio, son.
Yeah. He's so annoyed about what's in front of him. Like he never grasps the big picture until he has that moment where his kids are on TV.
Yep.
Like it's so funny. He's just so pitch perfect in that.
Man, I do think it's something so genuine about watching them struggle to perform this song for the first time with Guy and him playing the beat too fast and getting all the way on television and watching the crowd sing along with them. It's just like, it's wild to watch it.
That first performance too, like there's something so subtle that they did really well, which is Jimmy is completely off tempo, still trying to sing it slow like a ballad, and he transitions into being on tempo so smoothly that you almost don't notice until you're like, wait, it sounds good now.
Yeah. It sounds wicked.
Yeah.
It sounds so wicked.
But man, I just got to one of the scenes. I got to bring this up. Did you guys realize Paul Feig was one of the DJs?
Yes.
I did
He is,
actually,
yeah.
I love his cheesy DJ voice drops the second he's off air, and he's like, all right, guys, you can leave your headphones there. Thanks.
And they're very upset.
So good.
Thanks,
So
guys.
good. And then Clint Howard is the other DJ who's like super into jazz and like getting into that conversation with Guy. That was really good.
Clint Howard. Yeah. Man, no, there are several random cameos that I noticed at several points watching this movie. Like one day I was watching, I was like, yo, that's Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, Gus Grissom. I didn't even know that until I watched it this week.
Same here. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And then, like I said, I'm an Apollo 13 nerd. There's so many people that were in Apollo 13 that were also in this. Like you see them cross over. Deacon Apollo 13 is Phil Horace.
Yeah.
So there's a few of them. I can't remember the others, but I was like, oh, I see them. And like not that far off in eras wise.
This movie had to come out maybe 6 months before Malcolm in the Middle started too. Like this was right before he
Wow,
became
yeah.
one of the big TV dads.
That's right.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until like maybe like a few years ago. I watched that. I was like, oh, that's Bryan Cranston.
However, he already was dentist Tim Watley at this point in his career. I cannot see him from this period where he looks young and not think about like, did you change your religion for the jokes? Like that's all I think of when I think of Bryan Cranston now, is that he became a Jew for the jokes, and Seinfeld was more offended as a comedian than as a Jew.
Oh my God. Speaking of dentists, for some reason, like when this weirdly hot dentist comes out of this office, I always for some reason think of Little House of Horror, and I think he's just gonna slide across the floor and start singing "I'll Be Your Dentist" like Steve Martin.
Didn't expect a Little Shop reference in this movie, but that works. That works for me.
There you go.
Oh man. Did they not get the perfect guy to play the had a record, like high up executive, like in the pink suit.
Saul Seiler.
Oh my
right?
God.
Alex
they found
Rocco, he's great.
they found such a perfect actor to play this guy who clearly comes in, has no idea who these kids are, but is acting like they're his favorite new band. Oh man, like I don't know how into the casting Tom Hanks was outside of the regular four guys, but the casting in this movie really is the biggest strength of it. Every character feels like they're played by the perfect person.
He's perfect in it, yeah, for real.
And it did just feel like authentic. I think because of that simplicity, like it just felt so authentic to the era that it was.
Nothing
Like, they
feels
didn't go
forced. No characters feel forced. The story doesn't feel forced. Nothing happens too fast. It does. You're not going, oh, come on. Everything happens in steps. This is good writing, I think.
You know, we need to take a
Yeah.
moment to appreciate Rita Wilson's short role in this movie
Oh my God.
as Marguerite the waitress.
Yeah.
First of all,
So great.
she is I don't know if you guys watched how much of that special. She's the one who's responsible for Tom Everett Scott being in this movie.
Yep.
Because I guess Tom Hanks like thought he looked too much like a young Tom Hanks, and was like,
that's right.
I couldn't
Yeah,
cast him.
remember
And
that
Rita
now.
Wilson was just like, nah, he's cute. Put him in the movie. And then she ends up like basically playing a character who's trying to pick him up in a bar, and then is a little
Yes.
disappointed when he's too drunk at the end of the night.
Oh my God.
She's like,
And
you're no
just
good to me
too-
now.
Just and like so infatuated with doubt. Like I love that because I like always think about like if you put CM Punk in front of me or Bernie Williams in front of me or someone and the hottest man in the world was trying to talk to me, I would not care. Like it like I love that guy is just so obsessed with Del Paxton that like that could have been any woman. It could have been the woman of his dreams and he wouldn't have given a shit because he was just like drunk and Del Paxton was sitting there like just so perfect. Like I absolutely love
And she's not
how-
starstruck at all. Like she's seen
No,
she knows
no.
he's got roving hands. Like
Yeah.
she's
good cock and bull.
yeah, she's been there, done that. It seems like she's the waitress who's probably worked at that bar for 15 years.
Hey, Del, this kid knows you. Like she's like
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
knows her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
like-
he's just like, "Oh, really?"
It's like this small town band stepped into this world where all these people live in this world, and they're all accustomed to it, and they're just having fun with this band that showed up, all these fresh faced kids, and they think it's hilarious or something.
I mean, if we're
You are my biggest fan.
Yeah,
Like
that's
my
great.
favorite line in the movie. Just like he's so drunk and starstruck that he can't like he has no words and then Del is just like so I think charmed by what a little dork he is about it all.
But how
It's
great
so
is it that
sweet.
they sort of close that loop at the end of the movie with him coming into the studio and just jamming with
Right.
him a little bit? Like you can tell that after everything that just happened, guy's band is broken up, he's got to head back home. That's still the highlight of his entire career, was right there with Del Paxton. And oh man, it's just such a satisfying moment for him to come in and be like, "Yeah, kid, let's lay that down." And oh man,
I
yeah.
love how, like, to me, he was the lifeline to, like, all this is going on. Remember, you're a musician or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that part of musicians staying connected to music, I feel like, was such, like, a love letter in their relationship. I thought it was so great.
Yeah, and he's like, we only been together 2 months. He's like, for 2 months, like it's a lifetime. It's longer than a lot of bands I know.
It's
That kind
two
of thing.
bands,
So-
2 months too long for some bands I've been in.
Yes, that's great. He was great too. I mean, again, we could have went with actual jazz musician, but as we said, that's a whole other thing to look at and a whole other topic to tackle. But man, Del Paxton was great. I mean, it's just, again, it feels like a real person, feels like an honest to God musician. And yeah, it worked for me. I mean, it feels like a real guy for sure.
I mean, if you want to go back to your allusions to the Beatles, you could easily look at this guy and go, "Hey, man, this is the famous fifth member of the band, Billy Preston."
Ah, nice.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah, makes sense.
And Bill Cobb's like that actor. He's so great. Like he
Has
shows
been
up
everywhere.
He shows
Yeah.
up in so many things, and he's one of those guys that just always hits his mark. So
Hey, man.
casting him as this experienced, well-regarded jazz musician is just perfect.
Hey, man. Well, you can go from being the old man that shot Nino Brown to being the coach in Air Bud. That's a career, man.
That's versatile.
Range.
Being the coach in Air Bud.
That's
Oh,
range
man.
right there.
Range, my friend.
Yes.
I love it.
Can we talk about how Ethan Embry looks like a young Jim Parsons in this movie for
Oh
a
God, he
second?
totally does.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not a Big Bang Theory fan, but half the time I just see Sheldon up there rocking in a guitar. Like,
He's
Yeah,
a
that's
great
great.
actor. I'm not a
Yeah.
Big Bang Theory fan either, but he was in Harvey on Broadway. He's a phenomenal actor. I just don't. That's just not for me, that show, as most Chuck Lorre productions are.
Well, I'm a big band fan myself, and I particularly thought he looked like Parsons, but yeah, he
it's the haircut. He's
The
that
haircut.
same. He's that same skinny, lanky little kid. Like,
yep.
yeah. When I was watching, I was like, man, he's a dead ringer for Jim Parsons in this. It's crazy.
There you go.
What about the and we're talking about a movie about a rock and roll band, and we haven't mentioned much about the rock and roll. So, how awesome is it that this soundtrack sounds like a soundtrack pulled out of the early 1960s? I mean, this man, kudos to everyone that worked on the soundtrack. But man, what good stuff! Adam Schlesinger, who is no longer with us, I actually think he passed away from COVID related. Wrote That Thing You Do, and I think he actually performs it as well. I mean, it sounds like the real deal. Every song, in my opinion, that the Wonders do in this movie sounds like the real deal. How great is this soundtrack?
It's fantastic. I actually think their song. They have another song that they play once in the movie, "Dance with Me Tonight." I like
Love
that better.
it.
I like that better than That Thing You Do.
Same here.
Agreed. I also did. I think he did the soundtrack. He did all the musical work on a show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it,
yeah.
but my God, they do like 3 songs an episode, and it was weekly episodic. And they do it in different styles. It's a pretty funny show. It's a little redundant to binge watch. But when you were watching it in season and you had weeks between episodes, it was pretty great. But what they did with the music on that show was incredible, and it really showed what a range he had as far as stretching styles, because they just did everything on it. But he was also in Fountains of Wayne, and
Yep.
a really, really skilled musician. He did pass away very early in COVID. But this feels like right in that wheelhouse. Like he knocked that right out of the park, because it sounded exactly like that. And I loved Lenny's Dance With Me Tonight song. I thought was just so perfect. Like, and even just the snippets that you get of My Only Dreams, you're like, yeah, that sounds like a ballad from that era. Like, it's pretty impressive how on the nose it was. But that's kind of the beauty of it, you know. It's like this whole movie was not overdone, and that's what you really got to do, I think, with the music writing on this as well, is just don't overdo it. Stick to your chords and get out of there.
And the Red Suit concert, the actors still point to that to this day as being their favorite bit of the movie when they're on stage. It does seem like the best so-called performance of the film. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Phil, was that your favorite part of the film, like performance wise?
I do think it's probably their best performance, other than of course, the final performance they do of That Thing You Do. I just think the way that it's shot, the fact that they're on a big record that is their record, it's something about it. It's just a really fun performance. I think that is one of the few times that we see Jimmy not look like everything has to be together. He's just in the moment doing backing vocals. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I love that they play with the microphone placement, because that's a very John Lennon off stage right to himself, and Paul and George singing together to his right. So they play with the configurations to mimic the Beatles, which I also am a fan of. So
did you notice that the one time that the bass player, being Wolfman, got his own mic was when TB wasn't there?
That's right.
Yeah, there was a couple moments though where TB goes up and shares Lenny's mic.
Right, but I mean, Wolfman had his own mic during the TB performance. Like,
he was scary.
TB never had his own mic.
True. Yeah, he was roaming the stage.
One scene that I loved, I was thinking about like how many different settings we see them in when they are Captain Keach and the Shrimp Shack shooters, and Jimmy doesn't realize what they're there to do is one of the funniest things.
He's just standing there. It's so great.
He like, I think thought they were gonna like play an entire song and be like, that's how I always interpret it, was that Jimmy thought like they were really gonna play a song and that whole song was gonna be in the movie, and that they were gonna be like air jamming. And then he's just so mad because they look like idiots, and it's like, no, we're playing a rock and roll song at Weekend at Party Pier or whatever. Like, I just love how egotistical Jimmy is about it, of just like, we should be playing our music, you know? Like, he's so serious about it. It's like, dude, you're in a movie, chill the fuck out, like, relax.
He did that during the quote unquote interview too, because he thought he was going to get an actual interview, and they just came in to say hey, and then it was like, all right, well, leave the headphones when you're on the way out.
And the way he looks at Mr. White on the way out is awesome. He's just got like his coffee just staring a hole through him. It's great.
So great.
Oh, and then there's the part where they're talking to Mr. White afterwards. Mr. White's just like, good news, guys. I'm gonna let you keep the costumes. And Steve Zahn's the only one who cracks up.
So great.
Lenny and Mr. White have a thing going here, and I love how they have a little click, little connection, because Mr. White's kind of a wise guy too, and I think he appreciates that about Lenny. He calls him the fool later, but I think he appreciates him.
Yeah, like just the one thing when he's like, this Oneaters thing is confusing. We're just gonna call you the Wonders. He's like, as in, I wonder what happened to the Oneaters. And Tommy's like, yep. Yeah.
I love when Lenny is pulling the dressing room for cash to go to Vegas, and you get everybody's takes on it, and Jimmy just goes, no. And then Mr. White goes, I'm afraid that's against my policy. And guy goes, chump change. Like, yeah. I love that when we get those little moments where everyone's expression comes out.
Well, and
like,
Jimmy even said, ask so Guy, fun. He's a chump.
Yes.
And then Guy comes in and he's just like, and then Guy comes in and is just like, yeah, how much you need, buddy?
I don't think we got enough, honestly, of, and maybe the answer is they're not really friends, but like, they were kind of friendly in this small town. Were they best friends? Not really. Did they hang out together that much? Maybe. You never really
get the impression they just became a band before Giovanni breaks his arm.
Right. Yeah.
Also, how funny is it that it's just some stupid, like, I'm trying to jump over a parking meter?
Of course.
Like, it's not some big dramatic car accident like in, a sports movie would be or something like that. Like, he's just messing around with TV and he just falls, and TV's reaction is perfect. He's just like, guys, so Lenny fell.
He fell down. I love it. I love that, too, we also get that moment of heartbreak of him watching their success, which, like, in your head, you autofill, right? That wouldn't have happened, because without Guy, they would have never changed the song, right? And then this whole journey wouldn't have happened. But we do get the moment of him seeing how successful they were, and that, like, it should have been me moment.
No, it took him 2 minutes. It took him 2 months to learn Guy's part before that.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
That's
right. I forgot. I love those details. Yeah,
that's great. It makes it feel real. I love the Spartacus references all through this movie. It's so awesome. How'd we get here? I led you here, for I am Spartacus. That was great.
I love how he says that to his girlfriend and she just hangs up on him.
Yeah. It's like, hello?
And that's like the last we see of her in the movie too, is her hanging up on him. Oh my God, that big rig she's putting on her hair though, like that's such a real thing from the
Ugh.
60s that women
Oh,
did to
man.
themselves.
My God, I can't even be bothered to dry my hair. I don't understand how they did that.
Seriously, no, for real though, like the amount of stuff that women used to put themselves through and still do.
Oh,
It's
I was about to say,
it's
used to?
wild.
yeah.
But like in the 60s, man, like clothing wasn't as well made, so like all the nice clothes they had to be like strapped onto them. They couldn't just slide into it. Like, yeah, people don't give enough credit for how much work women had to put into just
My
going
God.
out of the house to go grocery shopping or something. Like, it's
That's why
crazy.
everything's so much more convenient now. Like, it's
Yeah.
still a bunch of work to like maintain, but it's all so much more efficient than like, let me heat these things up and then put them on my head.
And
It's-
then cover it
and
with this
sleep in 'em.
vacuum cleaner attached to a shower cap to dry it overnight. Like my mom told me she literally did go to sleep with that kind of thing when she was a kid in the 60s.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's very
I
real.
had pin curlers when I was little, and even those I was like, they dig into your head and they're hot. Like, what are we doing?
We need to talk about one thing really quick, and that's that Jimmy was obsessed with making their band name a pun. Like he wanted it to be the
Yes, the
Corvettes,
The Corvettes.
and then the Herds, and then the
Corvettes.
Wonders with an O-N-E. And I love Steve Zahn's the first person to call him out. It was like, it looks like the Oneaters. He's like, no man, it's the Wonders. He's like, yeah, I know. It looks like the Oneaters.
And then everyone calls them that after that.
Yeah. Hey man, it's the Onetters.
Hey, that's Onetters. I love the I like when they call out the like BEA, like the Beatles, we'd be the Wonders. Like, I like that they were that blatant about it because it was like that's what they were inspired by. You know what I mean? It wasn't like the movie was copying. It was like they were doing this thing because the coolest band in the world was doing this thing, so we were going to try and copy it.
And they
like,
never
I really like that.
And they never tell you what year this is until the talent show. As the camera pans back from the stage, and on the banner it says 1964. So the Beatles came to the States in February of 64. They were on the Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th. So depending on what time of year this was, you had to admit it was summer. I think it was summer because no one's dressed like for winter. So if they landed in February, this might be June, July, August maybe. So the Beatles haven't even been here that long, and they're calling them the Mop Tops. So it's very early. No British invasion, really. It's like maybe on the cusp of it right there.
The one guy even brings them up when they're doing the photography session where he's like, hey, why don't you guys have long hair like the Beatles? Don't you like the Beatles? Like, as if not having the same haircut means they don't like the Beatles for some reason.
Don't like them. It's so funny.
Leave it to the reporters to dig for stuff that's not there, right?
Oh, God.
There you go. The flash bulbs in the photo shoot, like all of that was so perfect.
So authentic. The sound is authentic. I love the sound of those things.
You know what else? Yeah. That first performance that they do with Wolfman in the band, that stage that they're on looks very similar to the stage for the Animals in that House of the Rising Sun music video.
Very good. Yeah.
Like it almost feels like a reference specifically to that, but I have a feeling a lot of those TV stages kind of looked like that back then.
And that's the Price is Right set that they filmed that on.
Yeah, they talked about getting to spin the wheel while they were backstage hanging out.
So fun.
It's awesome.
I also love the when they're in like that touring montage when they're swimming on the map like the monkeys. Like I love.
Oh, it's great.
Why were they chasing a racehorse? I'm so confused by that little part of that montage.
It's a funny Beatles thing to do. I love it.
Yeah, that's why I read it as they were doing a wacky Beatles gig because that's what the Beatles would do. They would just have like random videos of them doing stuff like that.
Yeah, the bit of them like running all over the map that's on the ground was really funny too. Like, there's just so many things about this movie that I enjoy, and I don't think that there's a weak minute in this movie. Like, it never drags for a second.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
In the director's cut, there was something interesting, and I'm wondering if they felt like this would have been too much of a sideshow, but there was kind of an implication that Tom Hanks's character was gay.
Yeah, Howie Long played his
cut it out.
Partner.
Yes, yeah, and I'm wondering if that was cut out because they felt like, because I think this came out in like 1996, so that was not like we were as a society that would have still been like something that was considered kind of shocking. I'm intrigued if that was cut just because they felt like it was superfluous or if they felt like it would have been like a distraction.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
it's
could have
tough to
just been one
say.
of those. It could have just hit the cutting room floor because of time. Maybe they, upon reviewing it, said, "Well, it's not. Is it essential?" Like you hear guys like Kevin Smith as they're cutting a movie and say things like, "Well, does it fit? Is it, like you said, superfluous? Does it make sense? I'll cut it just to keep the flow of the movie going."
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't feel integral to the film, but like I feel like in '96, I'm trying to think of like when Ellen was out, and like what a big deal that was on television. Like it was, I think, not far off from that time. Like from her sitcom, I remember that was a huge deal because she was out on the sitcom. Um, and I feel like it was around that same time. But that's one thing I remembered watching this now. I was just like, oh yeah, like now there's gay characters all the time and things, and like how wonderful that is. I was like, I wonder if that would have been like a huge thing for Tom Hanks to be doing.
Well,
Or if
when
it
was
was just like, we
Philadelphia?
cut it for time.
When was Philadelphia for him?
Good question.
God, if you look up his IMDb,
I want to say
insane.
99 so bad.
So I think Philadelphia might have been earlier. I gotta look this up now.
If you go to his IMDb, it's insane how many successful 93 for Philadelphia. His IMDb run is absolutely bananas. Like just hit after hit after hit after hit.
Oh yeah,
after
Tom
hit.
Hanks is one of those guys who doesn't miss.
Bonkers.
Like for
Wild.
me, there's a few definitive Tom Hanks movies, and this is one of them. Even though he's not the main focus of the movie, he's like super. Like this movie has his DNA all over it. But it's like this and Big were the two movies when I was a kid. We're just like, those are great movies, and that's why Tom Hanks is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like I said, I loved Apollo 13 so much, and like I always thought it was a cool movie, and then when I dug into it, like everything that they had to do for the anti-gravity stuff and like just to make the whole production of it all come together is just absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. But yeah, I mean, he just went on a run of insane movies. I mean, just like you figure that was before he even did like Saving Private Ryan and stuff. Like, man, oh man, lots of them. Forrest Gump was 94, and That Thing You Do was 96. Okay, very interesting. Saving Private Ryan was 98. Green Mile was 99. Like he just
yeah, he had a run where it was like every year it seemed like he was up for an Oscar for something.
Yeah, wow. So Sleepless in Seattle was 93, Apollo 13 was 95, That Thing You Do was 96.
Crazy.
And Philadelphia was 93. God, yeah, there was just a while
Not to
there
mention
where he was
all the Toy Story stuff that started in the 90s.
All the Toy Story stuff. Yeah, and then like Road to Perdition was 02. He was just out with a hell of a movie like every year for a while there. That is a bananas run he went on.
I might be mistaken. I think I read somewhere that his co-star from Bosom Buddies had a cameo in this movie.
Peter Scolari was the host on the TV show.
Oh my God, really?
Oh my
That's him.
God. Oh, I love that.
I watched Bosom Buddies on TV as it was happening, and I loved that. Long before Tom Hanks was Tom Hanks, and he was hilarious. It was a great show.
Yeah.
Isn't Colin Hanks in this movie as well? I thought like
he's the kid who's walking Liv Tyler into the TV studio for their big TV performance. He's like escorting her up the stairs.
I remember now. He has his hair flipped up in that like weird hairdo.
He still looks like Colin Hanks though. Like Colin Hanks has looked like that his whole life. He hasn't changed since Orange County.
Because I was in a sorority, I had to see the movie House Bunny, which is not a great movie.
It is terrible.
It is terrible, but Colin Hanks in it, his mannerisms, like you see Tom Hanks in him so much in the way that he's acting. Not like to the point where he's doing an impression, but like oh wow, you're this guy's son. Holy cow. Like it's a terrible movie. I can't emphasize enough how bad it is. But like he has just a pretty peripheral part, but when you're watching it, it's one of those things where there's moments where you're just like, oh, there's some chills of watching like Shades of Your Dad right now. And I'm wondering if that hurts him if he does want to pursue acting further, because it was like there were moments where you just were like, I'm watching a Tom Hanks Jr. Like, this is wild.
I know Colin writes and directs a little bit too. Like he's a super creative guy. So I don't know if acting is necessarily his main passion.
He
but
was in The Good Guys with
with Bradley Whitford.
I loved that show so much, and they
Bradley
canceled
Whitford is low-key one of my favorite actors ever.
Mine too.
That guy,
Mine too.
ever since Billy Madison, I will see
Yeah.
just about anything that dude is in, and I'm one of the few like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip defenders.
All right, I can get behind that.
I mean, you know, it's got a lot of the Sorkin-isms that some people find a little annoying, but man, Bradley Whitford and Matthew Perry just had killer chemistry as co-stars.
And if no one has
When
seen
I-
The Good Guys, you got to check it out. It only lasted like 2 seasons, but it's awesome.
So good. He is so good at like assigning weight to things. I feel like whenever I watch, he never feels too dramatic, even in very dramatic situations. It's like always very appropriate to the situation. The episode of The West Wing, where he's going through like his PTSD after the shooting, is one of my favorite pieces of television. It's like him and Alan Arkin, I think, is the therapist. He's incredible. I could talk for 6 more hours about Bradley Whitford, so we'll get back on track with the Oneaters there, but like just one of my absolute favorite actors, if not my favorite actor.
I gotta ask, you gotta wonder, did they approach Colin Hanks for the Turner and Hooch show that they're doing on Disney Plus? Because like
they're doing a Turner and Hooch show on Disney
the
Plus?
first season's been in the bag for a little while. It's that kid Josh Peck. He's playing. He plays Tom Hanks's son, and in the show, Tom Hanks's character has passed away, and he has since adopted another dog like Hooch and leaves the dog to his son. And I'm like, how is this not a slam dunk to cast Colin Hanks? He must have said no, because they had to have approached him, right?
I would think you would, but like I've seen Tom Hanks dunk on that movie so many times in interviews where he was doing interviews for like, I don't know, like Road to Perdition, and he would be like, well, it's no Turner and Hooch. Like I've seen him do that so many times that I'm like, I can't believe that they would I would guess he would want to go nowhere near it.
Is the age
talked about it.
Is it the age range, Chris? Is the age wrong maybe?
See, I'm not sure what Josh Peck's age is. He's supposed to be kind of a young cop, so maybe that is what held them up, because Colin Hanks isn't exactly a teenager anymore.
No,
he's a man that, you know, he's like, and that's the other thing too, is like I forget sometimes how old Tom Hanks is, because he sort of looked the same for about 20 years.
Yeah.
So you forget that he's aging right alongside you, and then all of a sudden when you see him with gray hair once, you're like, oh no, now I feel old too.
I do the same thing, especially if it's a movie you love. You feel like it's in a time capsule, and everyone stays just like that. And then, like, I would tell you what I'm talking about, but it's happened so many times. But then, like, I'll see them in the press, and I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Like, are you okay? Yes, they're fine. They're just aging. Like, oh my God. It's culture shock or something. I don't know what it is. It's yeah.
I love that him and Rita Wilson are like the prevailing Hollywood couple. They're never gonna break up. Like that's a good marriage. It's so wholesome. It's perfect Tom Hanks that him and his marriage actually work out well.
Yeah, man. I've said before that I think the thing that made COVID real for a lot of people was them getting it.
Yes,
and
yes, 100%.
How big of a traumatic experience that was for some people. And then you got Chet coming out. Don't worry, everybody, they're fine. He has said it in the most Chet Hanks way possible.
Yeah, yeah. I think he specifically said they're not tripping.
Exactly. Like, what do you do, bro? What?
Well, how he didn't get a gig with the CDC is beyond me, because he's eloquent. You know, he obviously knows his stuff. Calm down the public. Hey, man, they ain't tripping. It's all good.
Oh, man, it would be like that Simpsons commercial from the Simpsons movie where he's like, the U.S. government's borrowing some of my credibility.
So, favorite scene, and it can be a musical performance or whatnot, or even a dramatic turn, but what's everyone's favorite scene from the movie? Phil, we'll start with you. What's your favorite scene?
I don't know, for whatever reason, them doing their performance on a TV show, and then of course like the big breakup, and Faye gives like this big dramatic almost poem of why she's breaking up with him.
I wasted so many kisses on you.
And it's so
Thousands.
great. And
Thousands.
it's just like, man, it just the way that it's done is so good. And guy in the background crying with his shades on. And then they finish it off with take those stupid shades off. He's like, why couldn't you break up with her?
That was
Why
great.
couldn't have you dumped her in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that was great. And I love that she dumped him. He didn't get to dump her. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
She deserves better than him.
yes, she deserves Guy, Phil. That's who she deserves.
Exactly. I already told you, Guy's the best member of the band.
Yes.
Sure. That's it.
Kate, favorite moment of the film?
Oh man, I think it's gotta be when they hear their song on the radio the first time. Them like Faye running through the streets when she like has the stamp in her mouth and forgets to take it out and mail the letter. Like all those new ones, they plug in like 900 radios at their dad's shop. Like the innocence and the joy of that, I just thought was so funny. And like you guys alluded to, like I've seen bands have those moments too, and it's the best. It's just the best, and I love the way that whole thing was orchestrated. I thought it was so much fun.
Chris, what do you think?
Oh man, that's probably up there. I think it's tied for me with him and Dell playing towards the end of the movie, just jamming out together. Like there's something just so innocent and sweet about that scene of him getting to play with his idol. And then his idol's the one who tells him, like, you can make it as a drummer out here, man. Give it a try. And he does make it. And then him and Faye go and start a music conservatory. Like, it's just a nice, perfect little ending to the movie. But yeah, the scene of them celebrating in the store is just, it's so true to life. And you can't help but kind of be excited for this fake band in that moment.
Oh, God.
And
I
I
love
think
that scene.
that speaks to Tom Hanks right there. Like like little things he did in that scene as a director make the scene great.
I agree. And that's a great scene for me. I love it. I think I might be partial to the concert with the red suits. These guys supposedly played together and rehearsed together 5 hours a day for 6 weeks before they started filming. And they only had to learn 4 songs, but it's still 4 songs for guys that rarely ever played. And by the end of the run, they could play the song, and they can still play the songs because during the reunion, they were actually on stage somewhere for a reunion and played the song.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Ambry's jumping around playing the
my
bass.
God,
I loved it.
He was so funny in that video.
Yes.
He fell right back into that character. He had that big dumb smile on his face and he's bouncing around
So
all happy.
good.
Oh my God, that was so funny.
I love that it's them playing. I love that at no time when you see their hands, it's not the actor's hands. And Phil and I did the Ray episode and talked about what a plus it is that Jamie Foxx is an actual musician. So when they closed up on the hands, it was Jamie's hands. And it doesn't have to be him. You know, it's not really Ralph Macchio's hands playing that amazing solo in Crossroads. I mean, from a distance, he's playing chords, but it's not him. You know, that's Steve Vai, right? But you know, it doesn't have to be the guy, but the fact that it's the actor and he committed to it, for me, that just, I guess realistic may be the wrong word, but it just grounds it a little bit more for me, and I appreciate it more.
Yeah, I think there's something about Guy's performance and the fact that he's actually playing and just how frenetic he looks when he plays. It just adds so much to their performances.
Yeah. Chad was the wrong choice for drummer, apparently, kids.
Chad? Who's Chad?
Right. Or Chad or Pete Best, perhaps? I don't know.
I just love Steve Zahn's reaction to that in the garage. Chad? Who's Chad?
Yes.
When are we getting the records?
Yeah. We didn't mention Chris Isaac as Uncle Bob in the church.
Oh yeah, that was great. And how
Awesome.
how TB's the only one who picks out the Bible quote. Like that's just such in line with that character, man.
And Lenny has to say, Luke? Wait, who's Luke? When are we getting the record? Yeah.
Wednesday.
Because it was the book of Luke. Yeah.
I love the shots of the stained glass when they're recording.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. Like that was so well done.
And seeing him and Liv clapping in the other mic, like
yes,
that's exactly what you do for those songs. And for a little low budget recording to do it at the exact same time as they're recording the song, that is what they would do.
And you get acoustics in a church. Imagine the acoustics. Oh my God. So why is this only this? Tom Hanks has only directed 2 movies. One was a movie called Larry Crown in 2011, and that's it. Like he's done other work, he's written, But why is he never sat in the director's chair, you think? Anybody have a guess as to that? Or has he said, does he care? Like, I don't know.
I can't imagine people wouldn't want to give him the reins. You know what I mean? That's just got to be a choice where maybe he doesn't love it as much or something.
Yeah. He seemed like a natural, though. I mean, you see that old footage of him, and especially when they were taking the movie on tour, and the movie hit big in Japan. Did everybody catch that? Like, it got over big in Japan. They actually took the movie to Japan.
That makes perfect sense because
Yes.
music from the 60s got huge in Japan too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, they actually performed the song over there. They were treated like actual musicians, and they said that karaoke was so big over there. Like, they were in the nicest, oldest restaurant in Japan, the oldest restaurant, and they broke out karaoke in the middle of it. Like, every place over there has it. So, yeah.
And there's probably people over there singing that thing you do once in a while.
Oh, it's good. It's good stuff. That song's been in my head for 2 days, by the way.
Oh, how can it not? It's an earworm. And the fact that the brilliance of the songwriting for this is that when they play it the first time in the garage and it's played as the slow ballad that Jimmy intended it to be, it still kind of sounds good.
Yes.
So the fact that they were able to write a song that sounds good at 2 different speeds, that has to be pure talent. Like, you can't do that by accident.
Especially because it's not blues. Like, the knock on rock and rolls was that it was the blues sped up, right?
Right.
And like, to do something that could transform from a ballad to a rock song, I think is probably a little bit trickier.
Hey, man, as the Beatles reference guy, because that's who I am, Revolution was 2 different speeds. Beatles did it. I'm just saying, the original Revolution was awesome. It was acoustic. It was slow. And the other 3 guys told John, we got to speed this thing up, man. This thing needs to rock. It needs some guitar, heavy guitar. So they did the other version, which is amazing. So yeah, it works.
You know, real quick, just because we recorded the Johnny Cash episode recently, the band that they go on after at the talent show reminded me so much of the Carters. Just a bunch of women on stage singing some vaguely Christian song.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I feel like that was so intentional.
I love that their fan like is throwing paper airplanes at him, and then he is super into the folk band or a polka. The polka band comes on stage, and he's like rocking. He is rocking out to that polka music, man.
Yeah, was that the Kings of Brass? Is that what they were called in this movie?
I believe so. Yeah, but he I don't know that actor's name, but he's another one of those actors. He's so distinctive looking. You can pick him out of a crowd in any movie. He pops up in so many things.
Oh, he's been in everything too, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean Whalen, that's it.
Yeah, I was looking for his name. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. He was in Twister.
He was in Twister. He was part of the crew. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you look at his filmography, he's been in a million things that are recognizable, TV and movies. He was great as that character. And I love that him just making one random line about, hey, where do you guys got a record? I'd like to buy it. Like, that's what kicks everything off. Because then guys what do you guys think about that? You want to do
it? Oh, the fan.
Oh
what a
my
great
God.
Character.
That whole scene of him in the camper, and whatever he ladles into that bowl that looks awful. The stew.
Oh my God.
And they're all looking at it like, yeah, I'm not eating that.
Yeah, God, man, what a great movie and fun. I think that's the end of the day, kids. It's fun. I love it. I just love this movie.
How appropriate too that they're like their small time regional band manager is living out of this tiny little truck top trailer, and like none of them even look twice at it. They're all like, yeah, all right, this is a contract, cool,
right?
Yeah. Not like, I'm going to bring this to my lawyers. They're just like, someone wants to sign us to a thing. Yeah.
You're signing. I'm signing. We're all signing it. Yeah.
I mean,
give me a pen. I'm signing. You're signing.
I mean, we do get that scene of when he first talks to Guy and he's looking at the camper like, I don't know if I want to walk in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the cast. I love the band. The band feels real. Each personality feels like a real personality. And, I love, and, people talk about the cast of Friends. Like, if you love the show, it's cool that they still hang out and talk. like the shows that you love, you don't want to hear stories of, oh, they hate each other, they never spoke to each other again. I mean, not for nothing, Sir Alec Guinness wanted nothing more to do with the Star Wars universe. He was completely done with those people. He walked away. And I'm like, oh, come on, man, it's Ben Kenobi. What happened? And so you hate to hear stuff like that, but like they're all really good friends behind the scenes. Like Steve Zahn was Tom Everett Scott's best man at his wedding, which is cool. I mean, it's just they hang out and keep in touch. I love that stuff. So I love that it's good.
The story that they told on that panel about walking down in New Orleans with Rascal Flatts and Journey.
Right.
And some guy pulls over and goes, "Oh my God, it's the Wonders."
It's awesome.
Oh my God, it's so funny. But like Steve Zahn, man, he has been a part of so many iconic things. And the fact that you can tell this movie holds a special place in his heart when he talks about it, it's so awesome. And hearing him talk about going around and stealing signs out of the hotel while they were making the movie was so funny.
So, Phil, I'm gonna throw this to you first because oftentimes we fantasy cast and fantasy book on this show. I'm not talking about a direct sequel, but if it's in real time and this is in the 60s, 64, then in real time we're talking 1994. Is there ever a reason to go back and make a follow-up and you're seeing these guys in their lives now and their kids are involved? Or do you want to go back to this well, you just leave it alone? Or do you think maybe there's another fun story to be told here somewhere?
Nah, man, that's the magic of the movie. The magic of the movie is the movie in itself is a one-hit wonder.
Ah, nice. Well, I'm not going to ask anybody else now, as that was perfect.
Sorry, I'm sorry I ruined it for you.
You ruined it for me.
No. Oh, I love that. I also think because they did the like, this is where all the characters are in their life thing, I feel like just let it be that. Like, Lenny is currently single. Let him forever be currently single. Like, let Jimmy have his thing. Let the TV player never get a name.
I kind of wish Lenny's story had ended with, instead of Lenny is currently single, I wish it ended with Lenny's on his third marriage. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh man, and him becoming a casino manager was so perfect too, because he was gambling throughout the whole movie. He was playing poker with dudes at the state fair who literally had ribbons from the pig competition on their suits.
He's playing Go Fish in the bar.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
which was all improvised,
Lenny's
apparently.
Going fishing.
Like the whole Go Fish thing was improvised. He just made it up as he went, which is awesome.
Love it.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, I feel like the few people that have been directed by him have praised him for the fact that he's an actor director, so he knows how actors want to be treated by directors.
Yep.
And the fact that he trusted these guys to like do certain things just off the cuff, like, hey, pretend like you're reading the newspaper, go, and they get a great scene out of it. It's
go.
Yeah, like some directors, like you hear about people like Michael Bay and J.J. Abrams, like everything has to be the way they envisioned it perfectly, and if it's not, you redo it. And I feel like with Tom Hanks, he's probably just like, well, let's roll and see what happens, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I'm with Phil. I think you leave it alone. And in my head, I put it this way: if you don't do a direct sequel, it would be cool to have one or two of them cameo on a sitcom or cameo on this or whatever, just as a very brief, hey, didn't you used to be? That would be kind of cool to see. Whether or not they would ever go that route, I don't know. That feels like a TV show kind of thing where it'd be, hey, we got to get this guy on just for one scene. That might be kind of cool. But as far as exploring the world again, I don't know. I guess the movie's just got me feeling a certain way, and I just want to go back and watch it again. Maybe that's what it is. So.
I think a cameo is the most I would want out of it. Like if Tom Hanks were to ever make another movie about music in some way, just have like a random scene where in the background you see those four actors being interviewed about reuniting the Wonders however many years later.
That's great.
Yeah, but it's like it's not even a part of the movie or something.
Right,
like,
right.
Every once in a while, stuff like that happens in movies and TV shows. Like I don't know if you guys ever watched Raising Hope. I don't
think I've ever caught it.
Yeah, it was a great sitcom about a young kid who accidentally gets a girl pregnant who goes on death row because she's like an insane person. And then he ends up having to raise the baby. And that show, it opens with a scene in the background. You can hear a newscaster talking about Jason Lee's character from My Name is Earl completing his list.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So little things like that, I think that would be the only way I'd really want to see them do this. But I don't think they need to go back to a sequel. It is kind of just its own special little thing that should be allowed to exist on its own.
It's kind of like the Eddie Murphy shared universe with Coming to America and Trading Places. Like they inhabit the same universe.
The two old guys, oh my God, we're back. Just after Eddie Murphy hands them the bag of money. Oh my God, man. It's too bad those guys weren't alive, because I would have loved another cameo in Coming to America too.
Oh my God,
I have yet to see Coming to America 2, and I am afraid to watch it.
It's funny. Like, honestly, don't expect it to be as special as the first one.
It's not.
But there's some genuinely good performances. I think all three of his daughters do a great job. And I like the kid playing the main character. But just Eddie and Arsenio riffing off each other is always funny.
Yeah, I mean, they make it worth it. But Phil, it's, you may not want to rush to see it, but yeah, put it on your list. I mean,
I'll at least recommend you watch the one scene with Teyana Taylor, who plays Wesley Snipes' daughter. She comes in and gives an incredible musical performance and dance routine to try to win over this kid.
Very true. And that's Duke and Duke from Trading Places. Love that movie. Got to do a 6
Yeah. What was it? It was
the
Dukes.
It was the Dukes. Yes.
It was Mortimer. What were their names? Mortimer and
Randolph.
Randolph. That's it. Oh my
Duke
God.
has been sitting on this exchange since it was founded.
See, this is the thing. Marvel has ruined us, because movies can't just make references to each other and have fun little cameos. Now everything's a shared universe, and it's all building towards something bigger. And now everybody has theories about how all these non-connected movies are connected.
But it's fun. Even forcing it when it doesn't make any sense, you can still fantasy book it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Yeah, it's changed the way you look at things for sure. Well, kids, there is that thing you do. Great freaking movie. We could probably spend another hour and a half just talking about this, but man, love this movie to death. Haven't seen it in a long time. It makes me want to go watch it again. It just hits all the right notes, pun intended. It hits all the right notes, all the right chords. Kind of like a Corvette, if I may. But it's
thank you for intending your puns. Don't be a coward. You know
right.
what I mean? People are like, no pun intended. Intend your puns, people.
I'm a fan man. So I've been doing this a long time and been fangirling over all kinds of stuff. So yeah, no, I just got to put it out there. You know what I mean? You got to be who you are, kids. I'm just saying.
That's right.
So yeah, this movie again, folks. If you haven't seen it, you're doing life wrong. Go watch it. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, go watch it again, because it still holds up and it's still great. So Kate, let's try to take this thing home. Give me your last word on that thing you do. What's your thoughts on it?
I think just that it's so funny because we are all wrestling nerds too. Sometimes the best storytelling is the simplest, and that's why I think it holds up so well, like almost 2 decades later or whatever, is like when you fall in love with the story, nothing feels outdated. Like there's some really bad CGI effects in movies from the same time period. There's some really dated humor, but like if you just create a great story, it's so easy to stay connected to it no matter when you're watching it, what age you are, what time period you're in. And I feel like that's why I go back to this movie so much and have so many great memories around this movie with my family. It's just that simplicity, you know?
Very much. Chris, what do you think?
Same. I mean, this movie is just enjoyable from start to finish, and I have a really soft spot for all that kind of music. Like, I am that guy who drives around with the oldies station on. Like, I still listen to FM radio. I have the oldies station on. It's all music from before I was born. I don't care. Like, all Roy Orbison and the Ronettes and the Chantels, who are very clearly the inspiration for the Chantrellines, by the way, the Chantels.
Yes. Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's all great. Like Dion, all that stuff. Run Around Sue, that's still a classic song, man. Like, so all this stuff just is right up my alley. And obviously, I don't think it was possible to grow up in the 80s and 90s without being a fan of Tom Hanks. The guy's just in so many good things. So yeah, everything about this movie is pretty much pitch perfect. And we got to remember, this is Liv Tyler at the height of her power as everybody's crush. Like, I'm sorry, you did not grow up watching this movie or Empire Records and not develop a crush on that woman.
Makes sense.
Phil, what do you got?
I don't know, man. It's hard to not say this movie in a lot of ways is a great depiction of just how great Tom Hanks is. Like, I feel like there's so much of his DNA in this, whether it be his acting, his directing. It's just, man. And I mean, that's not a shade to anybody else involved, because as we've said, like, the cast is so great, but man, Tom Hanks is just really like Tom Hanks. Like, it's like when you hear people talk about The Rock and people are like, okay, I see him, and you see like he's handsome, he can do all these things, you can tell why he's a star. And looking at this movie, it's like, this is why Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I'm going to echo what everybody's already said. It's a simple script, and again, and I'm glad you mentioned the pro wrestling nerd part, because it's 100% true. But the simplest story is, I got a problem with you, you got a problem with me, let's settle it in the ring. It's so easy, and they mess it up so much. You know what I mean? It can be great or it can be horrible, but the basic premise is, let's just settle it in the ring. Like, for a movie, it's something so simple. Let's change the drummer. Hit record. I mean, it's very simple, and they didn't get bogged down and mired down in, for lack of a better word, politics or relationships or the news of the day. They could have, and it would have been a much different movie. It's no longer a comedy, more than likely. And I just think this movie wasn't going for that. It was going for more of a lighter tone, and I'm totally fine with that. And I think this movie ages well. I think it'll age well years from now. I think it'll still hold up. I just feel like it will, because it's got a great snapshot of what life used to be like, at least the music. And I think that's why it's always going to hold up. So yeah, I'm always going to be a fan. Like we said, kids, check this movie out if you haven't done it yet, for goodness sake. And yeah, it's a good one. One of the best, in my opinion. And that is That Thing You Do. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.